April 1st here, WHIP Radio at Temple University, Philadelphia's #1 college radio station. And it is April 1st, like I just mentioned. John Cole, Ryan Frascella.
We're not playing any jokes today.
Joe Williams here. No jokes. And we're just a couple weeks away from the Pennsylvania primary. And, of course, the nation has their eyes on Pennsylvania as Senator Pat Toomey is running for re-election. And before he knows who he's going to run against, he has to take on the Democratic challenger. 3 people sticking out right now. We already talked to Mayor John Fetterman of Braddock, Pennsylvania, on our program a couple weeks ago. We talked to Joe Sestak as well. And today we are delighted to have us joined by Katie McGinty. Katie, how are you today?
I'm doing terrific, guys. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's a great time of year. Again, as the race is heating up, and you're racking up the endorsements on the Democratic side. I want to start off the interview by talking about the importance President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden, who, by the way, we all know the Vice President was from Pennsylvania. Talk about the importance of their endorsements.
Well, look, it's a great honor for me that the President and Vice President jumped into this race and have said that Katie McGinty is the person that can carry the mantle on incredibly important issues like income inequality, like giving people decent pay for hard work, and I've been helping to lead the charge on fighting for a livable wage, but also the critical things like expanding Medicaid in Pennsylvania, which I was thrilled to work with the White House to get done, and taking on, now I know your listeners will care about this, taking on college costs that have gotten out of control. We can do all of those things. And when we do that, I think people will be fired up. They'll be ready to get out there and build a Pennsylvania and an America that's second to none.
Now, Katie, it's funny, the same part of town you're from, I'm also from Northeast Philadelphia as well, and I know one of the messages, you talked about working with working-class families. How do you plan to do that?
Well, look, for me, this isn't just a campaign cause. This is family. I'm 9 to 10 kids, and my dad was a Philadelphia police officer. Well, I know what it is to try to make ends meet on a paycheck that gets stretched pretty thin. So here's the kind of things I think we need to do. I think we need to make it so that there are good schools available to everybody regardless of their zip code. I think we need to get back in the business. Look, not everybody is got the skills or the interest to be to want to go to college, but they want job training and apprenticeship programs. We ought to nurture those. I want to support entrepreneurs too. If somebody wants to get out there and try to start their own business, look, I think we ought to be able to invest in those businesses and help them grow. These are the kind of things I think we can do. But for struggling families, it really is bring the cost of education down, bring the cost of health care down, and ensure that there's equal pay for equal work and that people are earning a living wage.
And, Katie, what has been the reaction going across Pennsylvania as you've been bringing this message to the voters? Do they seem receptive? And do you think that you have what it takes to beat Pat Toomey, Senator Toomey, in the general election should you win in April?
Yeah, people are fired up about it for sure, and, for 2 reasons. One, a lot of people are really struggling out there. I sit down with families now where it's not just the young person who's graduating from college that's struggling with that college debt, but it's their parents, who took out a Parents Plus loan, and maybe the grandparents are pitching in too. Everybody is feeling the stress of costs that are through the roof, but incomes and wages that haven't kept pace with that. So on the one hand, people are fired up and they want to see some change. They want somebody, like President Obama said I would be, to be a champion for them instead of just all the well-heeled interests in Washington. But second, I think they also are full of hope because, they know that, look, Pennsylvania is great at all kinds of technologies. Temple has been doing such a great job. I read a story even today where it's Temple scientists taking on the HIV virus. We've got scientists coming out of Children's Hospital that are tackling childhood blindness. People know that we have all kinds of capabilities, and what we need is somebody who believes in Pennsylvania workers, in Pennsylvania innovation, and will do things like make good education available, and will do things like helping the average person, get a shot at a contract or get a shot at an economic opportunity. And I think what they see in me is somebody who will be just that, a champion for, the average guy or gal just trying to get ahead.
And you mentioned that theme of hope. Do people seem like they've lost their hope with Senator Toomey in office right now?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, and you did ask in terms of taking on Senator Toomey, and for me, that's about two things. One is making sure that everybody knows Senator Toomey's record, right? I mean, here's a guy who has voted against allowing families to refinance college debt. Here's a guy that is trying to privatize Social Security. That's something our seniors certainly can't afford. And here's a guy who's leading the charge in terms of, refusing to do his job in advising consent on the president's Supreme Court nominee. You add that all up, and we have a Pat Toomey who's sitting way underwater at about 29% favorability. So the public is watching. But the second thing that I bring to this race is, look, there's strength in numbers. And one of the reasons that President and Vice President Biden have endorsed me in this race is they've seen in my campaign, a candidate who is uniting. Leaders in Philadelphia are all backing me, as well as leaders in Pittsburgh. I'm fortunate to have the support from the grassroots in Philadelphia to Scranton to Erie. United Ward Leaders of Color have jumped in for me. So I've been bringing people together, urban, rural, environmental leaders have all jumped in for me, even as labor leaders have as well. So that's not something you usually see, somebody who can bring the disparate parts of the Democratic Party together, but I've done that in 7 months. And what the President and Vice President are saying in supporting me is we're going to need that strength against a Pat Toomey who has all kinds of special interests working for him, $10 million already in the bank. If we're united and we bring the kind of force and coalition that I've put together, we definitely will be able to take on a guy who the public already knows, does not have their back.
Katie, thanks for joining us today. We've seen John Fetterman and Joe Sestak, doing their thing on the campaign trail. What, separates you from those two in terms of the Democratic primary?
Well, I think a couple things. One is, have you been able to win the confidence of key individuals and organizations out there whose values are very much, in jeopardy in this race? So, the organizations that are leading the charge in the fight for 15 to try to get a decent wage, they've endorsed me. They're working with me because they know I'm a person who can actually get stuff done. The organizations that care about the environment, they've named me as a champion of environmental protection, and they've backed me. So I have a track record of taking on tough issues, building coalitions, and getting it done. When I was Secretary of Environmental Protection here in Pennsylvania, we went from being nowhere to literally being one of the top states in the country in wind energy, in solar energy, in energy efficiency. And that's why, people who care about the environment are for me. But it's also why people who care about jobs are for me, because I brought 3,000 new jobs in that clean energy space here. So that's one major point of differentiation. With Katie McGinty, you don't have to just take my word for it. But if, but listen to those who are on the front lines on critical issues, whether it's the environment, whether it's labor, whether it is standing up for a decent wage. Every single one of those organizations is standing with me. And second, there are key issues that are important here. And, Congressman Sestak hasn't been willing to embrace, the fight for 15 and $15 an hour. I think it's imperative. People, need to be able to pay the bills. And so that's a point that really is a point of differentiation. And the congressman also is a person who supports cutting Social Security benefits and raising the retirement age on Social Security. I don't think that's the right way to go. I think seniors have earned Social Security, and we can't take that lifeline away from them. So there are key differences on issues, but with me uniquely, I'm the only candidate that enjoys the support of organizations and individuals that fight hard every day on progressive values. If that's important to you, I'm your candidate.
Joining us on WHIP right now, candidate for the United States Senate, Katie McGinty. Just to take this to the national scale as well, you worked in President Clinton's administration, and we know that you endorsed Secretary Clinton to be the Democratic nominee and ultimately to be President of the United States. Talk about what Secretary Clinton's message has resonated with you and the voters of Pennsylvania, you think.
Yeah, well, first, I certainly want to commend both of our presidential candidates. They are conducting themselves with respect and dignity, and they're speaking to the issues. And I'm just a proud Democrat in watching how our presidential candidates are out there and working as compared to what the Republicans are doing. And I'd be proud to stand either with Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. I do come down on the side of Hillary Clinton in this race, really for one reason, and that is, I've had the chance to work with her when I was in the White House working with President Clinton, and I've seen her firsthand able to bring people around the table, push a tough agenda, get to yes, find where we can solve problems and make stuff happen. I am thrilled with the issues that Senator Sanders is highlighting and putting out there, and I think they're critical. But again, on this one, I just have had the privilege of working with Senator Clinton, and so had thrown in with her, having seen firsthand that she's a force of nature who can get stuff done.
And Katie, just one final question here. We kind of run through all the stuff that you believe in, that why you're happy to accept the president and vice president's endorsements. I do want to touch on quickly the GOP side of the presidential race. What do you make of the rhetoric currently being thrown around, specifically with the frontrunner Donald Trump and some of the things that he's proposed?
Well, look, I think that he's touching a nerve for sure, and it's he's right in touching a nerve of people feeling that nobody's really looking out for them in Washington, and the special interests have the upper hand. The big problem is that Donald Trump is a hateful and divisive kind of person, a person who would lead this country in a direction of division, of discrimination, and everything about what he has to say in terms of what we should do about the anger that people feel is something that I find to be really revolting. The key thing here that is relevant for this United States Senate race is in contrast to that revulsion that I feel, our own Senator Pat Toomey has made clear that Donald Trump, will be his presidential nominee, that he's going to back whoever the nominee is, even if it is Donald Trump. Pat Toomey has accepted significant money into his campaign that was raised for the state Republican Party by Donald Trump, and Pat Toomey has refused to give that money back, has refused to call out Donald Trump on any of the really awful things that he has consistently said on the campaign trail. So we have a huge choice in this race. Are we going to continue to stand by the values and principles that made this country great, and that is diversity is our strength, and we respect every American, and we reward every American for hard work and for contributing to the community? Or are we going to go Donald Trump route, which is hatred, division, discrimination? I know where I stand, and that is for sure on the side of bringing us together. United we stand, and I also know for sure that unfortunately Pat Toomey is right in there with Trump, and that's another reason why We need everybody active, excited, and engaged in this U.S. Senate race as well as the presidential.
Katie McGinty, candidate for the United States Senate on the Democratic side in the state of Pennsylvania. Thank you very much for joining us today. Best of luck in the primary at the end of the month, and we hope to talk to you again sometime soon.
Well, terrific, guys. Thanks for taking the time, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. And for sure, there was no fooling around about this April Fool's interview.
Thank you very much,
so
Ms.
much.
McGinty.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
See you.
See
Bye.
you. Candidate for the United States Senate, Katie McGinty, nice enough to give us a few minutes here on WHIP Radio, Philadelphia's #1 college radio station. An interesting point she brought up about how she differs herself with Pat Toomey, and also that she is progressive in herself. That we know that John Fetterman has painted himself as the progressive candidate in this primary,
Sure.
but McGinty showed that the support she's garnering, she believes that she also deserves the vote of on the progressive wing of the Democratic Party as well.
And it's coming from kind of a different base, right? She highlighted how Pat Toomey was a little bit towards the center, right? She mentioned he wants to cut Social Security, raise the retirement age, but that she isn't more in line with the policies of President Obama and Vice President Biden, but not as far left as Mayor John Fetterman and Bernie Sanders and some of the stuff that they have proposed there. So I thought that was really interesting. Now that we've talked to all three Democratic candidates, kind of each where they lie on the spectrum.
Absolutely. So that was a great interview with Katie McGinty, candidate for the United States Senate, the Democratic primary, just weeks away